Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar, PPM Power Sessions Strategies for Navigating Disruption in 2025. My name is Andy Jordan, I'm the President of Refensian Consulting, and I'll be moderating and adding a little bit of colour commentary here and there to our discussion today. I'll allow our speakers, our panelists to introduce themselves in just a second, but before we get to that, I've got a couple of just boring admin stuff to do, so I'll get through that and then we can get on to the main content of this session. First off, we are recording this session, so if you miss anything or if you want a colleague to listen in afterwards, you'll be sent an email about 4 hours or so after the end of this webinar, which will contain a link to the recording. And that email will also include a link to give you a copy of the slides. So if you're looking for any of the slides, you'll be able to get that from that email as well. There will also be a PDU available from this webinar, and I'll give you the details of that before we wrap up. We'll have time in this session for some questions, and I think that the topic is really interesting, and there's going to be a lot of good questions going from that. So if anything doesn't make sense, if anything is sort of tweaking in your mind as we're talking, please feel free to throw that into the Q&A box in the GoToWebinar console, and we will get to as many questions as we can in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. There will also be a polling question as we go through, and I'll give you more details on that when we get to it, but be prepared to give us your thoughts on that. So let me focus on it now on why we're actually here. We're going to be getting a sneak peek into the results of a survey that Smartsheet, that is sponsoring this webinar, recently fielded. They asked more than 1,400 project portfolio management PPM professionals about how they're coping with and responding to change. Our panelists are going to be discussing the results and adding their own insights in today's session. And then after the webinar, everyone who attended will also receive a free copy of the research report that we're using as the basis for this. And that's going to launch later this month. So look out for that in the coming weeks. So with that said, let me hand over to our speakers and I will allow them to introduce themselves. So Annabella, please, ladies first.
Thank you, Andy. So Annabella Sardi, I'm the Vice President of the Program Management Office here at ADP, and we really focus on supporting the most strategic, complex initiatives across sales and marketing.
Excellent, thank you. Frank?
Hi, I'm Frank Chiacco, Director of Program Management at Securitas North America. The majority of my career has been in project management. I've been a BA, a QA analyst, a project manager. And my current focus, and really what I love to do, is spinning up successful PMOs, and I've been lucky enough to do that in several different industries.
Excellent, thank you. Frank also told us before this webinar started that a lot of people on his team are attending today, so please make sure you put in some really difficult questions for Frank as we go through it this place.
Nice softball questions.
Anyway, moving on. Alexis, last but not least.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Alexis Felton. I'm a Senior Solutions Specialist at Smartsheet. I serve as a subject matter expert on project and portfolio management, having had a career as an IT project manager and then a global program manager and then a global portfolio leader. So I'm super passionate about this space and very excited to chat with you all today.
Excellent, thank you. Great panel of people. We're going to have some great discussions and hopefully we'll have some great questions as well so we can stump this really expert panel. So let's get straight into our first discussion topic. So panel, we all know that change is inevitable. In fact, in the Smartsheet survey, almost 100% of PPM professionals say that they've experienced changes at work in the last year. And beyond that, 70% said that they were experiencing even more change this year than in the past. So I'm just wondering, what has your experience of change been in the past year in your organization? And what is it that feels different about the rate of change and how your organization has been able to respond? And I guess because I've got the floor at the moment, I'll offer some initial thoughts and then I'll shut up and let you guys discuss. I think that there's a lot of focus now on the type of change that's happening in addition to just the amount of change. I'm not sure that I'm always seeing more change, but I'm certainly seeing more change related to the business benefits and how we need to adapt and adjust projects to align with the needs of the organization rather than just sort of the triple constraint that is perhaps the historic perspective. Annabella, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Andy, listen, if there's one thing that is constant, is change. And you know what? That's not a bad thing, because it really challenges to think differently. I always think the world of work has changed so much, which then means the way we work, also has to change because expectations now are different. We have seen a big shift in the type of work that we support. The projects are bigger, they're more complex than ever at a really rapid speed. One thing we did that I want to call out about 6 years ago was to build a framework that would not only support the tactical projects, which we were supporting at the time, but also to be able to support complex projects and programs for the future. So when I was thinking of building this team, I was also, yes, supporting the current, but how can I also set us up for the future? And having that framework that really allows us to flex and customize, and that is important, flex and customize as needed, has really been the reason, Andy, we have been able to quickly respond successfully to the complexity and the changes that have come our way.
Excellent. Alexis?
Yeah, I think adding on to what has already been said, both of you have pointed to this a little bit, but when I started as a project manager, we were very narrowly focused on scope, schedule, cost, and then quality sort of came in as I was maturing in my program management journey. What I'm seeing now is that the expectations of project leaders are changing. So you really have to focus on how much value have you added to the business? Have you driven some internal process improvement? And that's a massive shift for project managers who grew up like I did in that sort of axis of scope, schedule, cost, because it's mindset difference, it's an expectation difference, and it's a skill set shift. So that change on top of the other environmental changes, I think is challenging.
Absolutely. I wonder whether or not part of that shift in focus could be attributed to companies looking for a little bit more clarity. There's so much going on at the moment that is uncertain. AI and the explosion of use cases for that, all the economic uncertainty. There's so much that we don't know. They're looking for some kind of clarity, and focus is shifting as a result of that.
100%. I also think there's some recency in how project success is defined. PMI just recently, if you haven't seen it, released their change for what project success looks like moving forward, which really has cemented this shift that we're talking about. So we're not just having to do all of these changes because of AI, but also because of the change in how we're defining project success and because of the drop in sometimes one third of resources that we've had due to what we've seen in technology, especially with layoffs and attrition.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you, Alexis. PMI's recent release is a huge shift in the way, we PMs traditionally work. I found that over the years, expectations have changed in the value that PMs provide. Their expectations of what we, how we support. They really want us to be strategic partners. We have a seat at the table today. We're influencers in our projects, which is quite different. It's a shift. For us, we made this shift in our program management team a few years ago, like I mentioned, to be more of a strategic PMO. And it has made a huge impact, not only on the value we provide for the team's professional growth, but for our clients as well. We must understand, in order for us to do that successfully, we must understand the business, what we are looking to accomplish, ensure clarity, drive alignment, and really understand the impact across the organization so we can avoid fire drills before we take out our special skills in project manage. I say that to my team all the time. We're strategic partners first, and then we take out our special skills second. And when you marry those two, it really is something unique that we provide. So it's important to break down the silos, drive accountability and transparency, and that is something that we do in everything in all of our projects.
Frank,
Yeah,
we've kept you quiet. We'll give you the last word.
I was listening intently. But on this topic, I mean, again, I totally would agree with what everybody said. And what I've noticed is that every year we accelerate and we bring on more change. And I was just gathering up some statistics for leadership recently, and we've increased the number of projects we've closed by 55% per year for the last 2 years. So that, that just really proves, and I think this is across industries, obviously not just at Securitas, but I think this shows that there is an increased rate of change. And I think this brings along with it some pushback, because now that we can implement changes so quickly because of the tools that we have and the processes that we've developed, the business isn't always ready for that amount of change. It's too much at once. And this is why I believe that there's been this movement or shift toward more strategic PMOs. Over the years, I've noticed that we've moved our focus from just getting projects done and over the line to making sure that there is business alignment and value. And as a PMO, we still ask the questions about schedules and raid logs, but we're also asking questions like, how is this going to impact the business? Are we implementing too much change at once? How do we transition a project to the business as smoothly as possible? Is this change even valuable? And as a PMO, we've added this organizational thinking to our responsibilities in addition to the project management. So now we're helping our organizations ensure that the right change is being made in the right way, and that's strategy.
Absolutely. Clearly, you're doing something right. If you're managing to deliver 55,
I
that's
have
impressive.
a very good team, and they're all listening.
Which is why you're telling them they're. All right. Let's move on to our second discussion topic. Executives are most likely to say not only that they've experienced more change this year compared to others, but also that the changes have required them to shift their priorities. This indicates disruption at maybe a deeper or more strategic level. It's no longer just the means to an end that's changing, but sometimes it's the end itself that has to adjust and adapt. How do you think this is impacting companies compared to maybe more traditional, more tactical changes? And I'll start just by suggesting that I think enterprise agility and the ability to maintain alignment through a lot of organizational shift has become much more significant. When executives are moving the goalposts, it's not just where we invest the money to try and achieve the goals and objectives or the strategic priorities, but those strategic priorities, the goals and objectives themselves may be changing as a result of evolving circumstances and environments. Every single person involved in doing the work to achieve those priorities needs to understand that shift and how they're contributing to those revised targets. And if you can do that, then the ability to adapt and adjust such that the disruption is minimized as the transition is happening is going to be much easier. It's a much more significant change, but it's much more easy to do with enterprise agility than if we were just changing a few things around the schedule or the budget or a couple of scope items. Alexis, I'll let you get the first word on this one.
Yeah, thank you. I think that when you make the change or the shift from tactical work to strategic work, or if you're changing your sort of organization strategy. So I recently talked to a customer who was moving from a product-led growth model to a sales-led growth model. And that requires a skill set shift. And it's important to make sure that as we make that shift, the team has the ability to lean into that so that they don't get left behind. Because what ends up happening is the culture changes, and that may not necessarily be the byproduct that you want from that shift. And so, making sure that employees um, have opportunities if the shift requires reskilling, which in a lot of these big sweeping changes it does, making sure that employees have those opportunities to have that reskilling so that they don't lose sort of their commitment to the organization and the goals, but also helping employees understand what is changing and the reasons behind it. So we often get the this thing is changing, but we don't get the why is this changing and how is this going to be a benefit. All of those things, being clear and transparent about those things, I think are central to not only helping drive the outcome that you want, but making sure that people don't feel left behind in the process.
Mhm.
And I think that, we mentioned tactical projects before, and we still run a lot of tactical projects, and I don't want to minimize them because they're important and they can impact the organization in a big way, even as we shift more towards the strategic role and strategic projects. But to address the concerns about change, what we've done here at Securitas is we've implemented a biweekly steerco meeting, and which is run by the PMO. And during these meetings, we bring in leadership from all areas across the organization, and we present updates on all ongoing projects. So this allows us to not only provide the project statuses, but we also highlight the strategic impact of those projects. Then this gives the opportunity for leadership to provide guidance. They help us prioritize efforts, and ultimately it helps them prepare their areas for the upcoming changes. This gives them the opportunity to say things like, hey, this is too much, slow down in terms of the amount of change. And I think this approach it encourages discussion, it mitigates some of that fear of change, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for making better strategic decisions.
And Andy, I'll just chime in as well. We can certainly relate to the goalposts changing quite often. We built our end-to-end process within Smartsheet from intake to serving up as project toolkits to portfolio management. And similarly to you, Frank, we are able to provide transparency to the work that the team is doing in real time via the dashboards. And this has allowed us to have factual conversations versus emotional ones to make business decisions on priorities with the leadership team. That has really been extremely helpful because there's so much going on and everything's a priority. And this has really allowed us to have, some real valuable conversations.
I think that definitely brings up a point about what it means to be a project manager, program manager, portfolio manager in 2025. Are we just box checkers? I know that was a big thing when I was an IT project manager. Is my project resources felt like, oh, here comes the project manager with their clipboard and a bunch of questions they're going to ask. And I really worked hard to make myself seen as a strategic partner. If I'm going to be leading these massive, enterprise-wide implementations, I have to be a good partner for my team. And I think that's the shift that we're seeing is project managers, whatever your P is, project, program, portfolio, are leaders in the organization. And as mentioned earlier, that's both a skill set shift and a mindset shift.
Yes, exactly. And that's a change that I'm really excited about. I've been doing this for a long time, and it wasn't always like this. The project manager role really isn't administrative anymore, and I don't think it has been for a while. The project manager is not someone in the corner taking notes anymore. They are very much out in front. They are sharing their opinions, they are sharing their experience, and overall, they're really shaping the projects. You're still a member of the team, of course, but you're a true participant and a partner on that project. And I think it's a skill set that we need to build into project managers if they don't have it already. And for those that already have it, those that do, we need to empower them to make that shift. Basically, I think project managers need to know that they aren't just a person that's keeping the ship from going off course anymore. They're actually part of plotting the course.
That's a great point. And I'm curious from Frank and Annabella, do you have any advice or guidance for this audience around helping to make that shift?
I think you need to manage both up and down. I think your leadership has to be ready for the PMO and the project managers to take on the role, and the project managers have to be ready to be that partner and driver. As I was lucky at Securitas, everybody was ready, but not all organizations are. And I think at those organizations, you really start with the project managers. It's a lot of mentoring, and it's a lot of explaining that this is an opportunity for you as the project manager to share the reins. You're empowered and you're backed by your management to do this. And as they take on that strategic role and your projects inevitably improve as a result, I think leadership starts to see the real value, and they get on board very quickly. So it's not as much of a sales job, it's kind of a natural progression. And again, it depends on the organization that you're working with, and you kind of have to tailor your approach, but that's what's worked for me.
And Frank, for me, I did it a slightly differently. I actually started with leadership to understand our why. Why the PMO team? What problems are we solving for? And, how can we drive further value? And once I understood that, it really became my North Star because I really understood we needed to modernize the way a PM organization works to meet the business needs and their expectations. And what does that mean? That means the PMO team was going to need to work differently. And like we've heard, it's a different skill set that not everyone may want to embrace working that way. So how did we do it? Because I did start with leadership for my North Star, I then shared that vision with the mission and vision really with our PMO team. Why it was critical to transform into a strategic PMO, what the business expectations were, and what it means for their career and their personal development, and what happens if we don't modernize. In doing this, you will have access to areas where they will need to upskill. You'll need to assess, right, the areas that you need to upskill, identify and plan for it, and set expectations for training timelines. It's really important to drive the value and get alignment from leadership, working functions in the team. Listen, not everybody, like Frank said, you said, hey, you were very lucky. All of your team was on board and ready to go. Not everybody is, but I do think it's important that we tell them the why and the impact it can have on their personal growth. And then, they would make the decision whether this is, the right place for them or not.
Great discussion, guys. Amazing content. All right, let's take a little bit of a pause from the discussion. We'll let our speakers top up their water. I'm just going to push a polling question live to you now, and you should be able to see in just a second. I pressed that button. There we go. So hopefully you're now seeing on your screen. No, it says preview. What am I doing wrong here? There we go. I have to hit the launch button. Now you're seeing on your screen. What would you say is your team? I know it's amazing, isn't it? Technology is great. What would you say is your team's number one roadblock to successfully adapting to change? And you can see there are some options there for you to choose from. So we'll give you a few seconds to read through the options and select them. And while you're doing that, I will pull in Frank and say, Frank, with absolutely no pressure at all, except for the fact that I will laugh and mock you mercilessly if you're wrong. What's going to be the most popular selection?
I'm just waiting to see how the poll, which one takes the lead.
Yeah. The idea was that you sort of give your thoughts before we share the results with everyone.
Oh, all right. Well, there's the flaw. All right. So, but if I were answering this question, it would definitely be the lack of effective communication and collaboration. And I think there's a number of reasons behind that. But one major one is that at any organization, you're trying to pull in people that are very busy doing other jobs all the time, and that makes collaboration and sometimes communication difficult. But that's just one thing. It's also making sure that you have the infrastructure for that you set up a process that supports that, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that too. But that would be mine, and I hope I'm not skewing the results here. I don't know that I'm right.
It's amazing. As soon as you sort of offered that. All right. I think everybody who's going to vote has voted by the looks of it. Look at that. As soon as I say that, it changes again. All right. Let me just end this and share the results with everybody. There you go. So that is what you said. And unfortunately, that means I can't take the mickey out of Frank because he was right. The vast majority of you said that the lack of effective communication and collaboration was a problem. So it's interesting because we actually also have the results from this question when it was asked in the survey. And if I just do, come on, my computer's being difficult. There we go. So if we look at this now, you'll see that I'll close the survey down and you'll see it in a minute. But I'm just looking for the number around the communication, which is here somewhere. There we go. Lack of effective communication and collaboration. 45% of people in the have said that. So a little lower here, but people could choose multiple options on the survey. So if I close that down, you'll actually see the full set of results there. Don't look too closely because you might notice that there are 6 options instead of 5, and that's because we could only put 5 into the poll. So there you go. You are consistent as an audience with the overall survey findings, but you'll see that there was a lot more closeness in some of those responses than in some of the responses from the poll today. So read into that what you will. All right, so let's get back to the content, because these panelists do a much better job of speaking to it than I do. So here's number 3. Ineffective communication and collaboration is the number getting in the way of companies adapting to change. What do you think are some of the steps that leaders can take today to start improving the way that information is shared and consumed across their organizations? What are some of the ways that you've seen collaboration work well in these situations? And because I always have an opinion, I'll just throw something out to start with. I think communication generally is pretty frequent. It's pretty common in the organizations that I work with. But the challenge I see is that often that communication is not consistent. So you end up with different roles, different people, different business areas having different perspectives of what they should be prioritizing, what's important, what the right approach is, and so on, which in some ways is worse than no communication. Frank, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, so our big push here has been creating a collaborative PMO involving as many areas as possible. And we started with creating a reliable, flexible, transparent process, along with opening up communication through things like dashboards and reporting. So, thanks to Smartsheet on that. But as a result of having this process and establishing a solid reputation for delivery, other areas naturally wanted to get on board. It was kind of a if you build it, they will come situation. And I think this is really what opened the doors to the more frequent, consistent communication and then ultimately collaboration. Now they know what they need to do to support the projects, and they can also communicate out to their areas and prepare them for the change that's coming.
If I could offer a sort of tactical lens on this conversation, I think communication is also about how a message is delivered. I think although there are a number of ways to communicate information, we still primarily rely on email and instant message. So whatever your instant message tool of choice is. And I think getting more creative with options for people to consume information. So we have internal town halls. I lead a monthly power hour. We just had it this morning, and it's always as energizing for me as it is for the audience. And I love having that sort of casual opportunity for people to come in and have reinforcement. We didn't cover anything today that we haven't covered in previous forums, but it's reinforcement, right? And I always sort of go back to the moment when I realized how important this sort of variety of communication options is. When I had a very brilliant engineer who was quite a bit younger than me, and I was just having a hard time getting him to respond. And so I finally went to him and I said, "You don't respond to any of my emails or any of my." We were using Jabber, don't judge us. We were using, you're not responding to any of my messages. So what's going on? And he told me, I have WhatsApp, so just WhatsApp me. And I thought, my initial response was from a defensive posture. It was like, I gotta go download and learn how to use another tool just to communicate with you. But I also thought, as a good program management leader, this person is telling me how they consume information, so I'll try it. And we created a bunch of WhatsApp groups, and it ended up being very effective. And what I realized is my engineering team was often away from their laptops, so they only had their mobile device, and WhatsApp was known and understood. So I think understanding how to reach your audience and how to get information in front of them so that it can be consumed is important. And then keeping the messages concise to how is this going to affect me day to day as an individual? when we miss the opportunity to connect a message to an individual, because we're doing broad communications, they get ignored and our message is missed. So I think balancing the amount of information being communicated, and how those messages are communicated is really important.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Alexis. When we don't do this right, we feel it, right? It's tactical, but so important. Understanding what is important to the audience is key. What do they care about and what do they need to know? Being too broad at times can lead to confusion and no action, is made at times. We tailor and communicate in a couple of different ways to stay away from email. We create chat spaces for project teams, separate functional areas. We have workstream calls. We set power hours. Hours are workstream calls. When we have really big projects, there's so many functions involved. And like I mentioned before, a lot of times they're working in silos, and it's so important to bring them together on a call, whatever the frequency makes sense, to provide updates and drive that transparency across, the project and alignment. I also talked about earlier, we create dashboards for the working team and leadership, and this really provides them the information that's important to them when they need it in real time. And our schedules are in Smartsheet, and also because that becomes our single source of truth, we can communicate directly and collaborate from all in one place. I'll just give you one final thought. Understanding how the team likes to work and communicate and consume information is really important, because then you can tailor that to them, and you'll get responses versus silence, like Alexa said.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you. Great discussion. All right, let's go straight into the next topic. In the survey that Smartsheet conducted, they asked PPM professionals how important 4 different factors are to their team's ability to respond to change effectively. And you can see from the graphic there that standardization and flexibility tied for the most important ingredient to responding successfully to change. So, from your experience, panelists, can you give us some examples of how you balance these two seemingly conflicting goals, what that actually looks like in a PPM world? Annabella, let's start with you this time.
Sure. I'm big on process, right? So if you have a standard and structured process with tools to support it, and those tools allow you to flex with your needs, you'll be able to respond to anything that comes your way, regardless how big or how small or how simple it is or how complex. That's their standardization has given us the confidence, because we can standardize and we can customize. We're confident that we can meet anything that comes our way with complexity. So that really has been key for us to be able to respond. And I think the key is to be open and flexible.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's absolutely essential that organizations have a framework for adapting to change that it seems familiar and comfortable to people. That way they know what's coming. It's happened before. They know the process. But at the same time, you have to recognize that every change that's implemented is different from anything that's happened before. And you need to have that willingness to tailor, to use PMI speak, or adapt and adjust within that framework so that everyone feels that they're able to embrace the change in a way that makes sense to them, minimizing the disruption for the entire organization.
Yeah, and I agree that there needs to be a process, but flexibility has to be built into it. Rigidity slows things down, and I think it ultimately takes away from success.
Yeah, and that is what PMI recently released, right? It's more about being a business partner, flexing, customizing to meet the project needs. Being rigid in the approach no longer works. I'm really excited about the new direction.
Right. And I mean, even if you look at highly regulated industries like finance or pharmaceuticals, where there are requirements and tasks that have to happen every single time, like legal or medical reviews, it makes it seem like there's this standardized process. But as a project manager, you quickly realize that every project's different. You have to be able to pivot, even in those industries, like if a regulation changes, for example. If you get too married to the process, I think that's where things start to fall apart. The process has to be flexible enough to change to suit what the organization needs. And I've seen PMOs shut down because they couldn't adapt or change.
Hmm. I think to underscore that point, if PMI is evolving, then we need to be willing to evolve as well. And the fact that we all come to our roles with our own perspectives and ways of doing things needs to be taken into consideration as well. If you've spent any amount of time with me, you'll know that I heard years ago this quote of, I'm not a control freak, I'm a control enthusiast. And so I fancy myself a recovering control enthusiast. I love standards and process, but I also have 22 years of life and work experience that I bring to that process. So I need the flexibility within that framework and that standard to say, I respect what was defined, but I also know who I am as a leader and I know how to drive this work forward. So I need the ability to do that. And it sort of underscores my passion for individuals being able to bring their whole selves to work and not sort of being limited by a rigid and unwavering process.
Excellent, thank you. Alexis, we didn't talk about this before, but I'm going to put you on the spot if you don't mind. There's been a couple of questions come in asking about
Sure.
PMI's shift in success. And if you haven't seen it, it's on PMI's website, it's on their LinkedIn, and I'm sure other social media feeds. But for the benefit of the people attending now, can you just give us sort of that 30-second summary of PMI's new sort of perspective when it comes to success?
Yeah, so in their Reframing Product Success blog, they've essentially released a formula that says that your project success is defined by value being greater than the effort and expense that you put into a project. So looking at that value as being incredibly important and not so much tied to that scope, schedule, quality, cost that used to be the underpinning of project success.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry putting you on the spot there. It just seemed like a question that
No
was sort of
problem.
appropriate for that spot. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Here's our last discussion topic, and then we are going to get into more of those questions. So if you do have some, please throw them in because I just proved that we're looking at them. Um, so here's the last discussion topic. 84% of PPM professionals say that AI is important to pivoting and adapting to change at work. Personal comment, what were the other 16% thinking? Anyway, what are some ways that you on the panel and your peers are using AI to help mitigate the negative effects, easy for me to say, of continuous change, like decreased productivity? Alexis, let's put you on the spot again. I'll let you go first.
All right, spotlight on me. Um, so there's a couple of things that I like quite a bit. There are things that we've built in Smartsheet, so little plug for Smartsheet, to help with tasks that are mundane or repetitive. The one that I love the most right now is leveraging AI to build formulas. I am not a formula person. I couldn't do them in Excel, can't do them in Smartsheet, but now I have this little AI assistant and I can tell it in real language what I want the formula to do, and it will generate the formula for me and allow me to validate that that formula is performing the way that I intended. So that's super helpful. The other one is PMI Infinity, which is a solution that was created by PMI. And what I absolutely love about it is that all of the results are based on project management specific research. So as I'm putting together sessions for thought leadership, I can be sure that the research that I'm using has been validated from PMI as being relevant to the project management audience. And I think my perspective generally on AI can be summarized in a quote that I heard at another PMI event, which is AI is not going to take your job, but a project manager who knows how to use AI effectively might. I think you all know as project managers, we are always learning and adapting, and AI is another tool in our toolkit that we have to stay ahead of.
And here we're piloting Microsoft Copilot and some other AI tools with with AI recording meetings, taking notes, summarizing documents and emails, and I think the project managers can participate more in their project. I think everybody knows it's hard to take notes and contribute at the same time. I think that AI helps to reinforce the idea that, hey, you're not note takers. This is not an administrative position. You're the driver of projects, and you have skin in the game. Um, AI allows us to focus less on the admin stuff and more on being a member of the team. And I see a real value to it. It really enhances engagement, and I think it makes us better project managers.
I couldn't agree with that more, Frank. You know, it really gives us time back to be able to strategize and plan because you're not spending that time on administrative tasks.
I would say there is just a note of caution about not being overly reliant on it, and not sort of getting to the point where we're using it in the absence of our own critical thinking. I think we've seen the horror stories of legal briefs that have been used that were completely made up, and so we don't sort of want to be overly reliant on that for our roles here.
Yeah, and I even have some people saying that they're afraid of losing that administrative muscle or skill set, which I think is kind of a great attitude. But I still think that you can do that admin and not lose those skills, but use AI as supplemental help. For example,
Hmm.
you take the time to do the review of the AI notes. Copy and paste doesn't work for AI. It's far from perfect, and it needs to be
Hmm.
checked. But that allows you to still craft the message in your own voice. I think the project managers who work together with AI are the ones that are going to be successful in the future.
Hmm.
You're absolutely right. AI should be complementary to what we do, not replace it.
I think I would say don't be afraid of AI, but certainly be cautious of it, which I guess echoes what a lot of you are saying. Not all of the tools are created equal. Alexis, you mentioned PMI Infinity. If you're not familiar with the website, I do know that one. It's infinity.pmi.org. Um, Here's a story in favor of PMI Infinity and very much against me. Um, those of you who know me from projectmanagement.com in the audience will know that I write a lot for projectmanagement.com, whether they like it or not. And I have a lot of articles up there. Earlier this year, the team at PMI Infinity reached out to me and said, hey, would it be okay if we used some of your articles for training PMI Infinity? And I'm like, oh, yeah, of course that would be good. Yeah, I'm going to train AI. I'm going to contribute to the future of PMI. It's great. And then they sent me a list later on of, here's the articles that you wrote that we used. And I opened the email and I looked down the list and I'm like, oh, this is a long list. This is good. And then of course, because I'm egomaniacal, I decided I'm going to count just how many there are on that list. And so I counted how many there were. And then I stopped and thought about it and I'm like, what about the other 90% of the articles that you didn't use? Are you saying that 90% of what I write isn't good enough for PMI Infinity? And all of a sudden, I thought a lot more of PMI Infinity and a lot less about my own talent. So there you go. Frank, I'll give you the last word on this one.
Yeah, thank you. And as far as AI is concerned, I mean, here at Securitas, we do try and embrace it as much as possible. We've had programs going on for years, and I guess it's from my perspective, it's sort of a know your enemy situation. So that you can work with AI, you can understand it, and you can ultimately use it and partner with it. I think I think the best project managers, they have soft skills. They can work with people, they can negotiate, they lead, they get people to get work done. And I just don't see AI taking over that role.
Mhm.
Okay, I lied. I'm going to have the last word based on what you just said.
There you
I think, what can I say, egomaniacal. Um, I think it's going to be at least a decade until the tech can be human enough to be a project manager, if it even gets to that point.
go.
But I think it's going to be a heck of a lot longer than that decade before business leaders, executives trust the technology to replace the human project manager. All right, so that's the last of our discussion topics, and we're going to get into the Q&A in just a second. But believe it or not, Alexis is so amazing. Not only has she been contributing to this discussion, she's also been making notes for the 3 key takeaways. I'm not sure whether she had AI help or not, but Alexis, I believe you have some takeaways for us.
And this is where I should have leaned in and embraced AI, but we'll do our best. So I think three key points here. One, be willing to make this strategic shift. With increased change has come a shift in perception of what project managers provide. So let's be that strategic partner, not the order taker. I think finding that balance of standardization and flexibility, and we've given 4 different perspectives on this, but understanding that there has to be some level of flexibility and adaptability while still adhering to a standard because that's how you get your efficiency gains. And then embracing AI with caution. So understanding that successful project managers will leverage AI so that they can enable themselves to make that strategic shift, be more strategic, but also not becoming overly reliant and letting it replace their critical thinking skills. Because we all have the skills to move work and organizations forward. So let's not lose that.
Excellent, thank you. Just final reminder, put your questions in if you got them. We have got quite a few questions, but if we don't get to everything before the end of this webinar, nothing is going to get lost, I promise, because we'll share them with the audience and get some other contributions via email. All right, so first question, Frank, I'm going to throw this one to you first. And it's more of a comment than a question, but I'm going to turn it into a question. It was about the comment that you made about shifting from focusing on triple constraint, on delivering on time, on scope, on budget, towards the value piece. And the person said that they were finally seeing that shift beginning to happen in their organization, but it was taking a long time. So any thoughts, any tips for people who are still struggling with getting their organization to make that shift and recognize that a project manager is a value driver, not an administrator?
I'm not sure that I guess it would depend largely on the organization and how willing they are to do that. But some of the ways that I think you kind of help that process and what what we've done here is it's really like I said, I always go back to the project manager, and I talk to my team a lot about this. And since I joined Securitas, it was always asking them to telling them, hey, listen, if you have an opinion, voice your opinion. You have run a lot of the project managers. In fact, probably most of us here, we've run hundreds of projects. You have an incredible amount of experience. So don't hesitate to provide that to the team. The team can outright say no, and that's okay. It's all right. You pivot, you keep moving. But they will start to listen if you keep offering your opinion. And I think that eventually, because we've been successful with that, because ultimately you will be. Again, if you're talking to a project manager that's got hundreds of projects under the belt and a whole bunch of different industries and a whole bunch of different types of projects like technical projects and construction projects and all that type of stuff, inevitably something that they say is going to be accepted, and it's going to be the right thing to do. And I think people start to realize that. And again, I will reinforce what I said before when I say it's that acceptance. It's not really a sales job. It is a natural progression. People start coming on board because they start seeing the value. So again, that's what I would encourage you to do. Just if you're moving in that direction, keep providing your opinions, keep providing your expertise. Just keep going.
Excellent, thank you. Annabella, Alexis, either of you have anything you want to add?
I would agree with Frank. At the end of the day, it's almost grassroots, right? You have to
Mhm.
show up differently in order for them to see you differently. And that's what I tell my team all the time. If you show up as a project manager, you're going to be a project manager. But what happens if you show up as a strategic partner, right? And they will start seeing that shift and that difference because you're absolutely right. You have experience, you have insight on the business. You've done this, not your first rodeo. Provide insight, provide guidance. And the other thing I always say is forget titles. A lot of times, like,
Mhm.
well, our CEO said this, or they said it, but what they mean may be something different, right? Because they haven't done this before. It's okay to say, hey, here's what I heard you say. is this what you meant? Because then here's the impact. You have to also be able to take a look at things. If you're able to show up, understand the business, and understand the end-to-end impact in your organization, that is extremely valuable because everybody thinks in their silos and in their function. They're not thinking cross-functionally. It's not how we grow up. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be able to make that shift from project manager to strategic partner.
Excellent.
I
Thanks.
love that.
Especially,
The only thing that I would add to that, because both answers are fantastic, is it's worth the investment of time to get to know your project teams and their jobs, roles, and careabouts. I think what made me successful as an IT project manager was I kind of looked at the dynamics between IT and between project management and engineering, and I kind of said, something is not right here. And so I asked the engineers, and the resounding response that I got was the project managers don't understand us, and therefore they can't represent our needs to the steering committee and to the other people that are involved in this process. So I sort of put all of my administrative work to the side, and I spent time on the ground with engineers understanding what do you do. Now, I will say you have to be ready for the answer because engineers love to explain in very voracious detail what they do. Um, but it is worth that investment of time, and you get it back in spades in those partnerships and those relationships.
Excellent. I'm actually going to pick on you for this next question as well, Alexis, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I don't think it's a situation that Annabella and Frank are having to deal with. And secondly, not only do you have an IT background, but you deal with a wide variety of clients in your current role. So somebody, Megan, was saying that she's seeing situations now in her organization where engineering teams are being siloed within a larger project team with just a single point of contact as sort of the interface between engineering and the project team. Wondering whether you'd seen anything similar in other organizations and any recommendations for approaches that could be taken to try and mitigate or persuade that that wasn't the best approach.
Yeah, I've seen it, and to some extent, in my time in contract manufacturing, was kind of subjected to it. And I think the reasons for that are vast. It's usually because of the communication dynamics and the priorities between engineering and program management, or engineering and other parts of the business. I think there's a couple of things. Again, going back to creating those relationships and really understanding what engineering teams are going through is helpful, but also giving engineers or whomever, right, whomever the siloed group is, giving them visibility into your challenges. So I remember I was having a really, really hard time with one of my engineering groups on delivery, and it was I kept them isolated from my customer conversations because I'm the program manager. I represent what's going on. And I just couldn't get the commitment to delivery and delivery on time. And so I invited my three engineering managers to a meeting with my customer, and they heard the questions that I was being asked, the frustration from the customer, the outcomes of us not hitting our delivery timelines. And we all kind of walked away from that meeting going, okay, now I get it. They also saw that I was extremely protective of them when I was talking to the customer. So the dynamic between us had some friction in terms of like, why are you always asking me why I'm always late and sort of those things. But what they saw was me representing to my customer that we are doing our best. We're having these challenges. Here are the challenges as I understand them. And they felt like, oh, Alexis actually has our back here. So let me like figure out now how to get this done because she's the one that's taking the heat for us not executing. So, summarizing my answer, I think understanding why those silos exist and figuring out where you can break them down or at least provide visibility that may not exist.
Excellent, thank you. I know we're running a little short on time. I'm going to try and squeeze in one or two more questions. Sorry, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. Somebody was asking for some suggestions around specific AI tools for project management. Now, Alexis, you mentioned specifically the functionality that AI has within Smartsheet, and where was that when I was using Excel? We talked a little bit about PMI Infinity, and again, the link for that is infinity.pmi.org. Frank, I know you mentioned that you're using Copilot to see how that works out. Any other suggestions, any other experiences with either specific PM tools that are AI oriented or general AI, Gen AI tools that you've used in project environments? Frank, do you want to go first?
Yeah, not necessarily other tools. I mean, we tend to veer away, at least from a work perspective, away from things like ChatGPT, and some of the other generative AI stuff because of, privacy concerns and,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But what I will say is that about Copilot, and I say this, and I'm probably my team that is again that are listening are probably upset with me because they don't have Copilot yet. We're just piloting right now, so I have it. But what I have found is that it does a good job, and it's a very interesting tool. It is something that if your company is willing, I would definitely recommend it. And as far as priority, I think a PMO should be really at the top of the list as far as a license is concerned, because it's almost purpose built for us. You can record meetings, it takes notes, it provides minutes. You can use it to help craft some of the communications that you need to do. It really saves you a lot of time so that you can get to a lot of the other stuff that Annabella and Alexis were talking about before. That one-on-one time with people, that open communication, that making sure, hey, listen, I need to negotiate with you. I need to make sure that you're getting things done. I need to get to know you better so that we can work together better as a team. And the more AI takes away those administrative tasks and allows more time for all of that other stuff, the stuff you want to be doing anyway, the better off you are. And again, I think I said it before, it just makes you a better project manager.
And Alexis, I suspect you've probably got more AI capabilities coming.
Oh, yeah,
Should be something that we're all looking out for.
absolutely.
Excellent. All right, I am going to try and squeeze in one more question. And Annabella, I'm going to throw directly to you and only you, so you get the last word before I get the last word. You talked a lot about strategic partners and the importance of being seen as a strategic partner. So the question here is, what if that's not how the team sees you? What if the team sees the PM still as a glorified administrator? How do you work to get them on your side and demonstrate what you can actually do as a PM?
That is a great question, and it's definitely something that we experience as growing pains. And I would go back to its grassroots. Get to know your team. Get to know what the project is about. Why are we doing the project? What is the problem that the project is solving for? Get to know how they like to work, how they like to communicate. If you understand the business, you understand what that project is looking to drive, now you understand the impact to the team that you're working with. Why are you driving that? And now you can come in with some insights. You're not just coming in managing a schedule and driving accountability. You've done this before. Lean on your experience and lean on your knowledge of your organization to come in and provide insight. We do scoping. We do scoping documents all the time, project charters. It's not just documenting the charter, it's gut checking the charter, gut checking that this is, why are we doing this? What's the value for the organization? What is the problem that we're having that we're looking to solve for? Be a part of the team. And if once you're a part of the team, you truly understand that it's going to be easy. They just think that you're part of their team, right? Because you're going to be able to provide and think differently. Remember, everybody works in their function. You don't. You're working across the whole organization. You are seeing things that they don't see. You see around the corners that they don't see. You understand what the other functions do because they don't. You coming in with that knowledge and you coming in with that insight, you are an extremely valuable partner at the table because you're not coming in just scheduling meetings and taking notes and holding people accountable to date. You have insight. And by the way, I know I mentioned before, forget the title. I mean, forget the title. Everybody wants to be led. Everybody wants insight, and everybody wants to know, what should I know? What is important to me, and what do you need from me? You can do that.
That's a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much, Annabella. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Frank. I very much appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I did promise you that I would give you PDU information. So as we wrap up, this is going to be a self-reported PDU. You don't need a claim code. Self-reported PDU on the PMI website under the business acumen category, and that's one PDU for the 1 hour. And that information will be in the email as well. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists, an amazing discussion. Thoroughly enjoyed it, learned a lot myself. I'm sure you did as well. And we'll talk again soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So, bye.